Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. In today's session, we will hear from Latinas in corporate America on how they learn to fine-tune their executive presence. Before we get started, I'd like to share a video from our Latina champion sponsor, Bank of America. Thank you to Bank of America for being HISAIR's Latina champion sponsor. Now I'd like to introduce our moderator for this panel, Managing Editor of NBC Latino, Sandra Lilley. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, I'm Sandra Lilley. I'm managing editor of NBC Latino, and it's my distinct pleasure to be with three very wise Latinas and wonderful professionals here at the Empower Her Summit. And we're going to discuss something that may sound a little conceptual, but it really isn't. The more years we're in the corporate and business world, the more we know that having that executive presence is an integral part of being able to do your job and lead, especially in the crucial moments we're going to right now. With the pandemic and with the disruption on businesses. So without further ado, I'm just so excited that I'm talking to three incredible women executives, and we will be asking them questions, and they'll be sharing personal anecdotes, advice, and some of the steps and what they've learned through the years on how to develop, build, and also be able to sort of share this presence with others and sort of be mentors to other wise Latinas who are also trying to someday take their place and do this kind of work. So I'm going to introduce them, and I'm going to do it a little differently. They have bios that make me look like a slacker, and they're quite long. So we're going to let them actually be the ones to tell us a little bit about themselves. But welcome, Yvonne Garcia, Chief of Staff to the Chairman and CEO of State Street, as well as she's the Global Head of Communications for the company. Salas Siegel, Executive Vice President and General Counsel for NBC Universal Telemundo Enterprises, and Misty Garcia, Small Business Region Executive for the Texas market for Bank of America. So Misty, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Misty Garcia, Regional Executive for Bank of America. I oversee all of small business for the great state of Texas. So in my role, I am responsible for delivering on strategies that better client experience, overall client relationships. But I feel the most important job that I have is that I'm a mother of four. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a mother of four. I have two in college and twins that are in elementary.
And by the way, you're in the great state of Texas, and I'm sure that you and your family went through a lot of difficulties, but we're happy that you're here with us and you look well.
Thank you.
And Anna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today sharing with you what I've learned throughout the years, and hopefully it'll be helpful. So my name is Anna Salas Siegel, and I'm the Executive Vice President and General Counsel for NBC Universal Telemundo Enterprises, which encompasses Telemundo Network, also Telemundo Global Studios, which is the studio for the network, as well as Telemundo International Studios. It also includes news and sports, and has the digital division, which is the digital platform for the company. I've been in media and entertainment for 20 plus years. I started very young. And And I very much enjoy the intersection of business and the law. And that's really what I thrive on. I also care very much about diversity and about women's empowerment. And that's why it's such a pleasure for me to be here today.
Thanks. What about you, Yvonne? Tell us about yourself.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sandra, and pleasure to be here with Misty and Anna and others. So thank you for the privilege of sharing the screen. So as you mentioned, Sandra, I am the Chief of Staff to the Chairman and CEO of State Street, as well as Global Head of Communications. I also run a variety of other initiatives within the organization. Prior to that, I was at State Street running what we call our global client solutions and implementation team for our investment managers, management services area. And prior to that, like Misty, was at Bank of America, serving as in the China Construction Bank initiative that they had many years ago, and spent some time in Beijing building out their private wealth management arm of the retail bank there. I am, as you know, as Anna and Misty, very passionate about inclusion and diversity, play a key role here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but also across the country. I served as the national chair of ALPHA, the Association of Latino Professionals for America, and currently am their president of the National Advisory Board. And I'm also very passionate about women initiatives. I'm the president of the Women Chamber of Commerce for Boston as well. So just really happy to be here and have a great discussion with my fellow panelists. And hopefully, you know, I find these just as insightful for myself as for the audience. So really looking forward to learning a lot and contributing.
Thank you so much. And we can't wait. So we're just going to get right at it and get started. Misty, I'm going to put you in the fire line first. And in your experience, how have you sort of built that executive presence? And again, I just want to reiterate how that is, it sounds a little bit like conceptual, but it really isn't. It really does make a difference, especially in moments like now, especially now that we're doing everything in different formats, right? Whether it's virtual and trying to reach people in ways that you haven't had to before. So how have you harnessed all your years of experience to sort of get there?
Well, when I think about, first of all, executive presence, I think of many different factors. It could be the way you look, the way you walk, the way you talk, the way you carry yourself. And there's one pivotal moment for me in my experience that really stands out, and I feel like it was a game changer. You know, I started with the company when I was 19, 24 years ago. I'm sure everybody's doing the math right now, but you know, my early 20s, I was given an opportunity to enter into management in an entry-level position. And I'll never forget a leader who was above me at the time gave me some very direct feedback and said, you really need to stop shopping in the junior section. Now, we could take that, you know, a couple of different ways. You could be offended by that, disgruntled, or you could do some self-reflecting. And I chose to do some self-reflecting. And, you know, I took a look, and I don't expect everybody, you know, to change their wardrobe when given that feedback, but you can certainly make changes. And if you're like me, I'm sure there's many of us who didn't grow up in a household where we had a female professional to look up to. And it's important that we identify people in the workplace to be able to give us good, candid feedback. So took the advice, and I can tell you, I feel like it was a missing link for me. I started getting noticed more. Within 6 to 12 months, I was, you know, getting promoted to different positions. And I can tell you to this day, I'm still very good friends with that individual. And I feel like that was just that pivotal moment. So I would just say, you know, embrace feedback, whether it's, you know, your communication, the way you carry yourself, the way you look. Stay true to who you are, be authentic, but just embrace it when it's coming from a good place.
You know, that's so incredible. That's a wonderful thing. Thank you so much for sharing it with us, because I think that there's so many ways you could have taken that, and you took it in a constructive way. And that's one of the things that sometimes we'll have people through the years say things to us in the corporate setting that might be a little shocking. But if it comes from a good place, you saw what it was doing. And it was actually, in your case, a real career development tool that you harnessed yourself and you were wise enough to use it. So that's fantastic. Before I go to other questions, Anna or Yvonne, do you have any similar sort of like observations about that first general question of how do you build that presence?
Absolutely. I'd like to follow up a bit on what Misty said. I too did not have role models in my family that I could look to for professional attire and how they carried themselves. So what I often did is I looked to outside material for guidance. So I do a lot of reading of management books, leadership books, articles that I can find. And I've sort of built an internal virtual library of advice. And over time, that library has also become my own experience. So it's been almost a virtual reading list, a library that I go to, as well as experience. And I can go to that with respect to how I build my confidence as well. But in the absence of experience growing up, what I did was, how did other people do it? I would look at other individuals who I admired and I thought, how do I get from where I am today to where they are? I didn't often know the path. I knew where I wanted to go, where I thought I wanted to go, but I didn't know exactly how to get there. And so I will give you one person that I think does a great job of defining executive presence, and that is Sylvia Ann Hewitt. And she wrote a book about executive presence in 2014. And she breaks it down into 3 pillars. Gravitas, which is what you know. Do you have substance? And how do you communicate your message? Because you can be very smart and have a lot in your mind, but how do you communicate to others that information that's in your mind? And then once again, to Mitzi's point, is how do you look? Because people will judge you based on your appearance. And it doesn't mean, as she often says, that you have to be the most attractive person in the room, but you have to, as is another often quoted phrase, you have to dress for the job you want. You have to look the part. And while Sylvia will say that it is the pillar that deserves the least amount of percentage, if you were to value each of the 3 pillars, it's the first thing that people notice. Mm-hmm. And so what I've tried to do, obviously that book was written 6 years ago, and I've been in my career for over 25 years. I've had to just pick and choose different advice along the way, but that is one that if I can give that advice and save people a lot of time and a lot of mistakes along the ways and trial and error, it would be that, because I find too that it's finding your own brand, creating your own brand over time. What works for you? You shouldn't dress like anyone else. You shouldn't speak like anyone else. You should be your true self, but always try to be the best version of that. And you can do that by learning as much as possible and reflecting to the world your best self.
That's wonderful. Thank you. What about you, Yvonne?
You know, both Misty and Anna shared really important points. And I love Misty's approach because at times I've had mentees that have said that they receive similar feedback and they've been extremely offended by it. But it really is, to Misty's point, that comes from a good place. And you know, and your ability to pivot and take it. And Anna, I love the 3 pillars. You know, for me, my mom did have a full-time job, but she wasn't an executive. She wasn't go into the office. She was a medical technologist in a hospital in Harlem. And so in terms of dress, it's not so much that I observed how she dressed, but I think her lessons and some of her non-negotiables really influenced me. So, and this may be very true for many in our demographic. And for example, Sunday dress. Today I see many people go to church, with jeans and sneakers. For us at home, you had to dress up out of respect for the house of God. And that, and some people may say, well, we're not religious, etc. But it's the point I'm making is she taught me to show up in the right way, as a sign of respect for others. And those were just some basic lessons and foundation that she said that I kind of took on throughout my entire career. It was just really the correlation of how you show up, with respect. So oftentimes, I may be overdressed, whether it's in a personal or professional gathering, but I'd rather be overdressed than underdressed. And that's my mom's fault. So, but it's just these lessons that you're taught at a very young age that you carry through. I also, was taught to, and probably because I'm the youngest of three and a 5-year gap, so I always surrounded myself with people a lot older than me. But that kind of carried through because I find myself really craving to be around ambitious people, people that have, in their mind already made it. I'm never really intimidated by others that, that seem to have, much more success than, if anything, I gravitate towards them because I learn from them. Some people worry about not being the smartest in the room. I kind of get disappointed when I feel that I'm the smartest in the room because then I feel that I'm not being challenged, I'm not learning. And then just those stretch opportunities that eventually, again, are correlated to executive presence, going for those jobs that it will completely take you out of your comfort zone. When I mentioned, the role in China, that was, leaving, I left my 2 children, a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old at the time. I couldn't bring them with me. I would come back once a month to visit them. Now I had a great support system, but that took a lot of, gravitas, and eventually it positioned me for greater roles, and I was seen a little bit different. So there's so many data points and variables that feed into what we call executive presence. And I love what you said, Anna, about how you look and dress is, the last pillar, but at times it's the most important because people immediately judge you when you enter a room or a camera. So I certainly, don't take that for granted. It is just something that's important, and I often mentor our young, especially women in our community. How important it doesn't mean that you have to go spend a lot of money. It's really just about how you carry yourself and show respect for yourself and your body and others. So I love what Misty and Anna said and completely agree with their point of view. So thank you.
I think there's also a subtext that I notice in some of the remarks that 3 of you are making. And let's face it, I think a lot of us feel pressure as Latinas also to be better. And in other words, like there's sort of that cultural worry that there's assumptions made about who we are, where we come from, our education, and it's almost like a lot of what you were saying is that in a lot of ways in the corporate world, we try to find ways to sort of have a toolbox that we can use to sort of like show that, yes, we can do it. And for better or worse, culturally, I think a lot of us do worry about things that maybe other people don't worry about. Am I too buena gente, que dirán, or this and that. And I think that a lot of it is sort of trying to do that. And it's really fun to hear and also very instructive to hear how you do it. And with that in mind, is there a certain mindset when you're coming into, let's say, like you have a big presentation or a meeting, or you're meeting for the first time, let's say a new executive in your company or something like that? Do you sort of have some rituals or some things that have worked for you in the past that you notice you tend to use in situations that are high pressure and very important? And let's start now with Yvonne.
I mean, like that's the first thing I would say is, body language and eye contact is key. When I enter a room, I stand tall or I sit tall. I engage, I maintain eye contact, which, really helps. It disarms people when you're looking into their eyes. They sense, this, it just conveys confidence. But more importantly, I always remind myself that we're all human, regardless of your age, color, religion, sex. it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we're all human, and we all have experiences in our life that have shaped who we are, and doesn't make one better than the other. I actually have a sign in my office that says, "Be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always." And I really have always led with that. And there's assertiveness and kindness is a very dangerous combination. And if you can have that, if you can walk into a room and make people, show people that you care about them and that you're respecting their perspective, but that you actually care about them as human beings, that is, just one of the strongest combinations of leadership that I've ever seen. And I have a mentor that is just like that, and I really try to role model her behavior, because she just gets it done, but cares, but just shows her empathy. And there's nothing more powerful, especially leading during this pandemic. Showing your employees that you care about their safety and their health, and their ability to care for their families during this time, while expecting them to engage and produce, is a tough ask. To have them have all this on their shoulders. So I think confidence, but also kindness and respectful of others' opinions and points of view.
Thank you. What about you, Anna and Misty?
So I completely agree with Yvonne on eye contact. I learned that early on, and it's been key, and also kindness. So I won't repeat those, but I do completely agree with what she's saying. What I will say are two things to be additive, which is to be prepared before I walk into any room. Going back to that point, Sandra, about feeling like you need to be at the top of your game every time because you represent a group of people that oftentimes is underestimated and judged before they're even given an opportunity to perform. So I feel that I come in with a certain level of confidence if I know my material, if I know the subject matter, if I know my audience. So that regardless of what happens in the room, I'm as prepared as I can be walking into the room. And then the other thing is, as soon as I walk in the room, I look around the room and I try to read the room as much as possible. Are there faces that look like mine? Are they not? Are they men? Are they women? Because you do have to read the audience, and you do oftentimes have to tailor your message depending on that audience. And I'm not saying that you need to be inauthentic, because I try never to be, but you do have to be cognizant of the people that you're speaking to and how best to transmit your message. And so I would add those two additional rituals.
That's excellent. What about you, Misty?
Yeah, I think all very, very important aspects, but I'll take it a little different. As women, we wear many, many different hats. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague, I'm a boss. And I can tell you that I've leveraged, executive presence and preparation for many of those hats. As I sit on the board for the PTO at my daughter's school, or I'm talking to a medical professional about my father. But specifically, from a meeting setting, I would agree wholeheartly with what's already been said. But the last thing I would just add, that's extremely I'm passionate about, is be on time. So being 5 minutes early is on time for me. The last thing you want to do is appear rushed or frazzled because you're rushing to get there. So that would be the only thing I would add.
That's fantastic. I love that. We remember growing up, I grew up in Puerto Rico. We used to say, like, is this Puerto Rican time or American time? We always used to make sure that, we were there. It always makes me laugh, but it's really important. And again, it's a sort of marker of how serious you are when it comes to your work. So Thanks for bringing that up. And um, Anna, what about building courage when it comes to again, you know, you're faced with, let's say, something new that's happening, a big thing, a big project, you know, be dealing with legally. Have you through the years ever had to, like, you know, do some sort of courage building to get yourself to a certain position?
So absolutely, absolutely. And I think I'm much more comfortable with courage as I've experienced different events and as I've failed and realized that I can get up and continue. I think that one of the things that I've learned is to speak up. I've found a voice, and not only the ability to speak up, but the substance of what I'm speaking up about. So I try I've tried to be thoughtful about what it is that I think, why I think what I think, and can I defend it in a way that's dispassionate? Because as Latinas, we can be very passionate, but I think that as a lawyer, I've also tried to be, I've tried to take the emotion out of the argument, because oftentimes I find that it detracts from the delivery. And I know that may be controversial, a statement, because people may say, well, I'm passionate and I want to deliver my message with passion. And that's okay, because that's also what diversity and inclusion is about the ability to be your authentic self and deliver it in a way that's authentic to you. So what I have tried to do is I have tried to build courage through logical explanations, because I have found that when I've built it and I've gone too emotional, I go down a rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And it has not, for me, been a positive experience. And I see that the reaction in others is to dismiss the substance of my statement. So that's when I've had to do that breathe in moment. And I try now to do it before, so that I don't do it during or after, because before it would be, why did I go there? Why did I lose my temper? Right? Or in the middle of it. And that's what I've learned over time, to not let myself be triggered by people that don't have as open a mind, or may just be X, Y, or Z. You know, they may be anti X, Y, or Z, and how not to let those be triggers, whereas before I might have. That's where I think I find the courage to still deliver the message, to try and modulate it to the person that I'm delivering it to, so that never the substance of what I'm saying is questioned.
Just a quick follow-up, because you're an attorney, and I loved sort of, I could see your legal mind going there when you were talking about trying to build an argument without being you know, trying to be dispassionate. Any quick tips for those of us who are not attorneys as to how you sort of build that and have that argument without having your legal background?
To the extent that you know it's coming, right? Because oftentimes you don't know when someone's going to come at you with something. But if you're walking into a situation where you know that either what you're going to be stating is going to have some pushback, is to be prepared for it, right? And this is part of what Sylvia Ann talks about, which is to be 3 to 5 questions deep in your gravitas, is to be able to respond to questions asked of your position, is to know why you stand for something. Not only at an emotional level, but at an intellectual level as well. And to try and be able to articulate it in a way that goes to the substance of the issue and not be emotional about it.
Thank you. Misty, I was curious when you were saying before, you started at such a young age and then you had a position of management so young. Uh, that takes courage. That takes real courage when a lot of people in the room are older than you. How did you sort of build that? And you obviously had to be a quick study about that.
Yeah, and I think Anna called this out earlier. For me, I find my courage through confidence, and I find my confidence through being prepared. And so always being prepared. So if I'm going to, you know, join a meeting, I want to take a look at that agenda. I want to be well versed on the topic. If there's meeting content, I want to ensure that I've read through that, so that I come prepared to really give that value add. And I think that confidence really brings out that courage. And then the last thing I would say is I'm really big on surrounding myself with strong talent. And, I believe, Yvonne, you called this out, but I don't pretend to be the smartest person in the room, but I can guarantee you someone on my team that I've surrounded myself with will be able to answer that question, or I can lean on them. And so having that support also instills confidence and courage.
Yvonne, I'm so impressed about your work in China, and if it's hard enough to break into the corporate world here, I mean, you're breaking into the corporate world in a totally different continent, language. How did you build your courage there? Give us an example of some of the stuff that you did when you were there. I'm fascinated by that.
Thank you. It was interesting because before I went, Bank of America puts you through this really great cultural training before you enter a different country, where it really takes you through everything in terms of, for China, how to hand out a business card, what part of the table you should sit at depending on your seniority. But I did kind of go with this bias thinking that the whole leadership team would be all men, and I would be one of the few women. And it was actually quite the opposite. The executive leadership team on our Chinese counterpart side were actually almost all women, with the exception of their head, which was a man, but their head of asset management was a woman. So I was pleasantly surprised to see the percentage of women leaders on a China construction bank, which was the bank we were working with. But I will say what was different was a few things. Certainly the way decisions were made. So we went with an executive sponsor. The Chinese team had an executive sponsor, and all discussions and decisions were only made through those two individuals. So unlike here, where you just share your perspective and your opinion, and others react to it, I would have to share my point of view with my executive sponsor, and then he would then take it to the executive sponsor of the other team. So that was very, very hard and different. But other than that, I go back to treat everyone being a human being. And I went with a team, and they were like, well, this is going to suck. It's going to be, they're going to do this, and we're not going to be able to do this. And, I don't want to eat that food. Then really at the end of the day, when I got there, I found everyone wanted to do the right thing for the firm. Everyone wanted to be successful in the project. Everyone wanted to be able to go home and support their family and be there for their kids. And there were little differences here and there. When I was there, it was the one child rule. So I knew not to ask how many kids did you have, because for the most part, there was only one. But other than that, they wanted the same thing we wanted. And I made I formed such great relationships that I still carry on to today. And it was such a great lesson. We have all these divisions and separations that we try to insert between generations, between ethnicities, etc. But we are really all the same. And I think if more and more people, become more curious about our differences and respect them and understand the notion of compromise at times, companies would certainly do much better, and just quite frankly, as a society, we would progress a lot faster.
That's wonderful, thanks. It's sort of like pivoting on that. That sort of makes me think of authenticity. And Misty, you know, as women, sometimes maybe we felt like we've had to compromise our authenticity when it comes to being female, or in our case, it's you add the sort of cultural layer, especially many of you are actually all of you have been working in businesses that are more male centric than female. How have you sort of managed that, sort of staying true to yourself, but building what you need to be forceful and to be a managerial presence in your company?
I think it's a really great question and a real concern. You know, I would say that I feel I'm a very observant person, and I tend to look at leaders, female leaders in senior positions, and not to mirror them, but you know, obviously they've made it, they've been successful in this environment. So what is it that they have done, you know, from an image, from their communication style, and really work to emulate that or just learn from that. But I will strongly emphasize that it's always important not to lose your authenticity. Be true to who you are. Have your own twist to it, but certainly leveraging those senior leaders that that have already made it as a role model. And I feel, you know, blessed that I've personally been able to have many strong female mentors in my 24 years that I can lean on to this day, as well as men that I can solicit feedback and ask for candid advice. And again, you've just always got to be open to embrace that feedback when it's coming from a good place.
Thank you. What about you, Anna?
So I've often, as I'm sure it's happened with Misty and with Yvonne, been the only woman in the room. But I've never wanted to be one of the men. And I've never tried to do that. I would find it very inauthentic to try and be one of the guys. I wouldn't really even know where to start. But I did try to find always commonalities, whether it was interest in the business, in the project. And I have always tried in my career to be a business partner. And so oftentimes, in addition to the layer of you're a woman, these are the men, you may be a Latina and they may be Anglo, you're also the lawyer and these are the business folks. So there's an additional separation factor there that I tried to bridge by focusing on the business, and that almost creates this bridge for the other two areas, right? Where I will say, well, what are we going to do? How can I help? These are the things that I think will work, and I've tried to focus on those things. And as Misty has said, also work with the female leaders. I too, since an early age, have looked to the women and thought the same. What are their traits? How did they get there? What are the things that they're using? And I've often been very impressed with women that can speak to the men and with the men in a way that's very comfortable and find other commonalities. I unfortunately don't play sports or have as big of an interest. A lot of women do, and that they find that commonality because, as Yvonne has said over and over again, we're all human beings. And I don't think, and I've never thought that the men are the enemy. I think that they could be better allies. And I think that they can be better allies if they knew what to do. And oftentimes we don't talk about these things, but we don't talk about them because we haven't developed as close a relationship. I know I haven't. I mean, and I'm probably aging myself here, but grew up when the boys played here and did this, and the girls played here and did that. My daughter doesn't have that experience. My daughter has a lot of male friends, and she finds them easy to get along with. She plays team sports. She plays club sports. I didn't, because that's not the kind of thing you did as a young Latina girl. And so I think that some of those things also will facilitate conversations that will translate into corporate America. Because if you play team sports and if you are more comfortable in co-ed environments, you have this sense of camaraderie, this sense of talking about things without feeling hurt. And it isn't so much gender-based, it's just team-based, I find. So I try to also think about it that way. Am I reacting? Why am I reacting? Right? Or why am I feeling this way? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm the lawyer and I think they're rejecting me because they think I'm going to say no? And so sometimes I question myself to see if, is this really happening? Is it something that I need to do a better job at? And then I really try to find commonality. And for me, I've found, again, because I lack this sports knowledge and this experience of having grown up with guy friends, I try to focus on something that's neutral territory, which is usually the business objective. And then you find that the men in the room will speak regardless of their background because they're interested in meeting that objective.
That's wonderful. Thank you. What about you, Yvonne?
Listening to Anna, I couldn't agree more, and Misty's comments as well. My experience kind of being the only woman in the room, as we experience often here in corporate, especially in finance and in investment banking, really started in college. I joined I was part of the Army ROTC program, and I was the only woman in a 100-male platoon. And
wow.
Yeah, so that was one of the very first times where I had to, my mom's that kept repeating itself, like make sure you're respected. And anyone grew up with a Latina mom, probably remembers those sayings. Always, make sure that you behave in a way that will demand respect, that will require, that others will know who you are, and that you're to be respected. So I had that at a very young age, and I made great guy friends that not only were extremely respectful, but would help me. I didn't know how to braid my hair, and when we would enter the food hall, I would have to take my cap off, and so they would do a Swiss Army tie on my knot on my hair so that I wouldn't get in trouble. So I experienced allyship at a very early age in my life, but it also taught me how to carry myself in a room full of men, to be able to send a message of, look, I'm really no different than you, and I demand for you to respect me. And by the way, if we can be friends and learn from each other, even better. So I've kind of carried that throughout my career. And I will say, I think Anna made this point, I've also learned how to understand, how men think, how what motivates them, how they make decisions, because we have to work together. And I learned that skill set when I was running Alpha for close to, I don't know, 15, 17 years, leading chapters and then eventually the organization at the national level. And when you're not, when you have thousands of volunteers trying to, achieve the mission and the goals that you set forth for the organization, and you're technically not paying them a penny, you better quickly learn what motivates all of these volunteers that are really treating this like a second job, and what is it that gets them going. And oftentimes it's really just understanding the other side, the other person, whether it's a different ethnicity or gender, etc., sex, and being able to respect, but also at times tailor your approach, whether it be communication or how you make decisions. So it's, for me, it's a bit of an investment, but it's one that certainly paid off. I also have a lot of mentors that are men, and I have old white male mentors. I have young mentors, and I really benefit from those relationships.
That's great. And this other question is great if you can each give us maybe a couple of examples. But when it comes to best practices that you have applied sort of to represent yourself. You know, you sort of built your toolbox, and if you had to each say a couple of best practices that you find yourself continuously using, what would they be? Who wants to start? I'll let you choose.
I can jump in there. You know, I
Go
feel
for it.
like my biggest asset that has served me well is my ability to connect with others. So social skills in work and you know out of work, and you know through that I've just been able to form so many strong relationships over the years that you never underestimate the power of building a strong network and creating those relationships. I think it's extremely critical. And then the other thing that, you know, I will just, you know, say I feel is a strong suit is developing talent and recognizing talent. And, you know, I think we've now earned, a position where it's important for us to pay it forward and continue to be a part of the solution, not the problem, by identifying strong, diverse talent and promoting. So I think those two areas I would call out are really important and near and dear to me.
That's fantastic. Anna?
So I would say communicator. I try to think clearly before I speak so that what I say is clear. I try to be intentional about what I say and concise. And I would also say collaborator. As I sit at the company, I work with a lot of different divisions, and I'm often privy to information that not every group knows. And I try to make sure that the necessary groups know the information on a timely basis so that we can work together for the common good, so that it prevents that kind of silo mentality that so often bogs down companies. And I try to do that also with my teams so that it works to create more of an effective teamwork. I would say those two things.
Thank you. What about you, Yvonne?
I think a little bit of both of what Misty and Anna said. I think as Latinas, we are really strong networkers, and that has really come, that's truly favorable for us in this corporate environment when you have to at times, you know, I call influence without authority. Not everyone reports to you, some are more senior than you, and yet you have to be able to have those relationships that allow you to get things done or help you to get things done. So, and then, you know, in my role as communications, for sure, I truly believe in the power of communication and cascading, in my case, the CEO's message and thoughts about how he would like to see our employees behave and work. So the power of communication is very strong. I've seen firsthand how it can shape the culture of an organization. And then lastly, for me, I think I would be known for, and a legacy that I'd like to leave is just bridging the community with corporate. Everything I've done in my life, whether it was through Alpha or Milagros para Niños, helping Hispanic kids that can't afford medical care, and now most recently, Small Business Strong, helping Hispanic small businesses that have been hit by the pandemic. Everything I've done in the community, I have bridged it to corporate, whether it be ensuring that we have corporate executives that are part of the advisory boards or the governance structure, just finding ways to educate others on the power of our community while also giving back.
That's wonderful, and you use the word legacy, which I think is wonderful, and you've all learned it, and it's just wonderful to hear you. And I think we're in good hands when women like you are leading. So I want to end this wonderful conversation with sort of like impact, in terms of if you can go through and talk about where have you felt you've done the most impact, that at the same time has been a real point of pride for yourself. You felt that it's been who you are, what you were meant to do, and everything sort of lined up. And we can go reverse now. Yvonne, I'll put you on the spot again.
Yeah, no worries. I think serving as an ambassador for my community, bringing my community to the forefront, helping educate our community on critical things that they may not have access to, and and just being able to drive change, change that will benefit, especially the generation that's coming up the ladder, or the youth. So I think my biggest pride and joy of all the nonprofits that I've been part of and all the positions I've held in corporate America would be Milagros para Niños. It's helped me keep life in perspective. When you have a family sitting by the crib of a child smiling, and you ask the nurse, like, how can they be smiling? You just told me this baby has maybe a week to live. And she said, Yvonne, they're just happy to have another day with their baby. That role and the ability to create something from scratch that has helped so many, hundreds of babies that would not have made it if it wasn't for that initiative, has truly humbled me and has helped me keep life in perspective. So when things aren't going okay at work, or my kids think the world's falling apart because the Wi-Fi connection went down, I remind them just of the great work that our frontline workers are doing, and the important work of literally saving lives, and more importantly in this case, helping those that if they did not have the means, they wouldn't make it. So that has been my biggest.
That's fantastic.
Sense of
And
pride.
what about you, Anna?
Well, first of all, Yvonne, thank you for everything that you do. That is amazing work. And we owe a lot of debt to you and to all of the volunteers that you lead. Thank you. So I would say that I've focused in a couple of different ways, but my main focus has been on mentoring young women and minorities. And I've done this through the HNBA. I've done this through the University of Miami. I'm a practitioner in residence for their LLM program, and also through the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion program within NBC Universal, where I work. And for me, I'm very passionate about being able to impart whatever knowledge I can, whatever experience, whatever lessons learned I can to individuals who were like I was a few decades ago, I say now. But if I can make the journey that much more enriching, less painful, less doubtful for them, if I can open any door so that they can walk through them that much quicker, I feel that it's what I owe to them. I mean, I've been blessed with so many opportunities, so many friends that have helped me, and I just feel it's my duty to give back. And there's still so much to do. I mean, we've really come a long way in many ways, but we still have such a long way to go. And it really gives me a lot of pleasure when I'm able to make someone make a connection they wouldn't otherwise make, or be able to get an opportunity they wouldn't otherwise be able to.
Thank you so much. What about you, Misty?
Yeah, I think it's great hearing from these two ladies. Amazing. I'll take it back to this past year, and 2020 has certainly been a challenging year with the global pandemic that we're still fighting to adjust to. And then piled on with the social and racial injustice. And, I know everyone's seen the video. Bank of America now is making $1 billion commitment to really fight the racial and social injustice. And I couldn't be prouder of that work. And that really took me, it forced me to do some self-reflecting and saying, am I being a part of the solution? Am I helping? Am I driving impact? And one thing that I did, to really help support that cause, I oversee 200 employees in Texas, and I took it to very small, intimate meetings. And I wanted to really challenge everyone to let's have open, courageous conversations about what's happening. Are we doing enough? What more can we be doing? And, I let them in. So they truly got to know who I am. I shared my own personal testimony. And I can tell you that, the responses received were just phenomenal. it felt good. It felt really good. And, I've challenged my leaders to continue that work to ensure that we are giving back to the community and we're doing things to support not only our clients, but each other. So, we at Bank of America, and Yvonne probably remembers this from when she was with us. We survey our people, and every year we have employee engagement scores, and I was happy. And it's really, how do they feel about the company? How do they feel about our progress? How do they feel about their leadership? And we received a 97 out of 100. So to me, that was very strong validation that we're doing something right. The work's not done. We've got a long road ahead of us, but I feel I'm in a unique position to influence some of the real issues that we're facing today.
Well, I honestly mean this when I say it's been a gift to get to know you a little bit. The three of you are doing incredible things for your companies, but also more than that, for your community and for the next generation of Latina leaders. So I'm humbled, and I thank you for the great insights you've given us here. And I wish everybody a good 2021. We have a big things ahead of us, and hopefully we'll be in a better place as a country when we all get vaccinated. But in the meantime, thank you so much for sharing your insights, and we will hopefully see you sometime again.
And Misty and Anna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, Yvonne, Misty, and Anna, and thank you again to Bank of America. That concludes our session for today. Don't forget to join our 2021 Latina Empower Her Summit LinkedIn group by clicking the sign in the networking lounge. Also, don't forget to check out our sponsor, research, and media partner booths in the exhibit hall. I hope to see you all in the wellness session coming up next, where we have an amazing practitioner who will be leading us in a yoga session. Don't worry, you don't need to turn your cameras on. See you there.